Good evening and welcome to all our attending students this evening and to parents and teachers who have also joined us. My name is Tony Jordan and I'm the school manager of the UNSW Rural Clinical School. This is the first time the school has presented so widely across New South Wales and in fact interstate in an online live stream format such as this, and we're extremely pleased to have you with us this evening. More than 175 registered attendees, which is a great achievement and certainly in our current changed environment lends itself well to this new way of delivery. To start this evening's proceedings, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of country throughout Australia and acknowledge their continuing connection to land, sea and community. We recognise particularly First Nations peoples from the Bedegal, Wiradjuri, Biripi and Gumbanya country, where our Rural Clinical School campuses are located. And we pay our respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to others Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present with us at this evening's presentation. We certainly have a lot of information for you this evening. Our presenters are from our mid-north coast campuses of the Rural Clinical School. We have with us our Directors of Medical Education, Associate Professor Ray Hodgson, or Dr. Ray as he's known, Dr. Alison Seckel, our Director of Medical Education at Coffs Harbour, and they'll talk to you about the many career opportunities available in medicine, some of the many benefits of studying at our Rural Clinical School campuses, and obviously information about the unique 6-year UNSW medicine degree, particularly the undergraduate clinical years. Following Ray and Alison, we have Dr. Linda Farrington, our Phase 1 Academic Program Coordinator and the school's Director of Research, who will focus on our Phase 1 Basic Sciences, the Independent Learning Project year, and which is a feature of the UNSW degree, and our rural teaching campuses across New South Wales. We'll then come to the part of the evening where we discuss the rural entry scheme, which will probably involve a lot of you in our audience tonight. A special entry pathway for rural students who meet specific rural origin criteria. And to kick that off, one of our Year 1 medical students, Theo Last, will talk to you about his rural entry scheme experience last year. Following Theo will be Miss Kimberly Minogue, who is our School Services Coordinator, and she'll talk to you about everything that's important that you need to know about rural entry. After that, our medical student experience. We have 4 students with us this evening from our campuses in Coffs and Port Macquarie, Andrew Trist and Elise Chalk from Coffs Harbour, and Michael Joubert and Stephanie Clark from Port Macquarie. Following our students, we will do a video and a Q&A session at the end. I would like to mention at this point the special entry schemes that the UNSW do have. We will focus tonight on our rural entry scheme, obviously, but the UNSW in 2021 has a new gateway entry scheme for students attending identified disadvantaged metropolitan schools particularly, and of course our widely acknowledged Indigenous pre-medicine program, both of those providing alternative pathways into the medicine degree, and up to 20 places are offered between these 2 special entry programs. You can check out more details on our UNSW Medicine website. Okay, so we're ready to kick off, and I'd like to introduce to you our first presenters this evening, Associate Professor Ray Hodgson and Dr. Alison Seckel, who lead our programs at Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbour campuses respectively. Dr. Ray, as he's known, will be the first to the live stream microphone, followed by Alison. Welcome, Dr. Ray.
Thank you, Tony. As Tony said, I'm the Director of the Medical Education here in Port Macquarie, and it's great to be able to share with everyone who's online just why we're so passionate about what we do and why it's so good in this remarkable world of medicine. And I've got to say, we feel really privileged to have medical schools here in Port Macquarie and Coffs Harbour and other parts of rural New South Wales. And thanks everyone for taking an interest in what's available to all of you. So you might say, why study medicine in the first place? Why would you put yourself through what's, let's face it, a lot of hard work to become a doctor? Why would you do that? And we can start listing reasons why you might choose to study medicine. And the first thing you might say is, well, if you were looking at any tertiary course, the things you might consider are, well, have I got a guaranteed job? And with medicine, you would say absolutely that you can virtually, once you've got your basic medical degree, you've virtually got work at any stage in your life, and not just locally. Once you get that ticket for medicine as a doctor, you can essentially travel to any part of Australia, perhaps not right now with the COVID pandemic, but any part of Australia and most parts of the world to practice your career in those places as well. There's not many degrees that can provide this. With it, as a doctor, it's fair to say that we have a relatively good income compared to most professions, and our status is high. But we as doctors generally have a high profile, and we get quite a deal of respect in the community for what we do. These sorts of things are more important for some people than others, and what medicine can offer as well as that is that as a doctor you have a really broad range of things that you can pursue. Once you get your ticket as a doctor, there are just so many options open to you, and this is where it starts to get really good now. You can essentially you can attempt to lead your work and your knowledge to cure things like cancer and other devastating diseases. You can literally save lives, either through your research into these diseases or actually at the coalface. And the buzz that you get from saving a life, the buzz that you get is mind-blowing. It's not just saving lives, it's improving lives as well, and you can improve the quality of countless thousands of other lives too, and that, as you can imagine, has got massive rewards as well. And then something which is close to my heart is the humanitarian aspect of medicine if you choose to go down that road, both in developing countries but also in developing parts of our own country. There's enormous good work that you can do to help underprivileged people, and I can tell you firsthand, to transform the life of a person by helping an underprivileged person with their health, to transform their life, it's hard to put the fulfillment you get from that sort of thing, it's hard to put that into words. So to break down the various options you have as a doctor, to break down the types of choices you have once you become a doctor, we tend to break them into clinical and non-clinical halves. So by clinical careers, we essentially mean you're having interactions with patients, sort of face to face with patients. You're seeing them and you're managing them. So most of you, if you're studying medicine, the first few years of your course, you've got no idea which branch of medicine you want to go down. And for some people, it's even years after they've graduated before they'll actually work out their niche within medicine. General practice is that's still one of the most popular choices for a doctor. It's, as a GP, you'll need a really broad knowledge of medicine. You're a family doctor. You get to know your patients and their families over the years, and you watch them and you grow and develop and age. You watch them as they face the challenges that each of those things throws up at various phases of their life, and there's no doubt that with those long-term broad relationships, there's a lot of reward and gratification in that. But along your path to becoming a doctor, a lot of people find a particular area of medicine that grabs them, that piques their interest. And if that happens to you as a trainee doctor, then you tend to want to specialize in a certain area of medicine. So as a physician, you might choose to become a cardiologist or a gastroenterologist or a kidney specialist or one of any number of other alternatives as a physician. Along the way, you might develop a passion for hands-on skills, for the practical aspects of medicine. You might enjoy using your hands to attack the challenges that general surgery puts up to you. And even within surgery, there's multiple branches of that, from general surgery, for example, to orthopedic surgery and urology as examples of many. Oh, look, there's more. These are just a few of the many options, but the branch of medicine that stole my heart was obstetrics and gynecology. I became fascinated in this area when I was a medical student myself, and I decided to specialise in obstetrics and gynecology. I loved the challenges and the delight of treating two patients at once, and I loved the joys, and still love the joys of bringing a new life into the world. That's what took my passion. Pediatrics, the magical kingdom of pediatrics, the special joys that come with working with the little people. And psychiatry and anaesthetics. These are just some of the many examples of the options that you've got, but there's others too, and you may choose to go down a pathway where there is limited contact with patients, and pathology and radiology are these, less face-to-face interaction with patients. So there's some of the examples of the clinical areas in medicine, but the non-clinical areas, just as crucial. Public health essentially means working, if you're a doctor, working to improve the health of society as a whole. And the current COVID pandemic, there's no better example than this COVID pandemic that shows how important public health is. The government, we as a society, need doctors to analyse these infections and to advise government bodies and to work out the best way to prevent outbreaks. Medicine has a rich and proud history of medical research over the centuries, really, and through evidence-based medicine, our treatment and diagnosis, management of disease has increased multiple fold over that time. And probably, again, there's no better example as the value of research, of medical research right now than this chase that is on, this desperate chase that we have right now to find a vaccine for COVID-19. That is desperate, and that's just one of an example of the importance of medical research. But again, there's thousands of other areas where that research is just crucial to us improving society. Yeah, health management. We're so lucky in Australia. I'm not sure if many of you realise how our health system is one of the best health systems in the world, and other countries look at Australia with envy as to how good our health system is. And every time I travel overseas and work in hospitals in other countries, I'm reminded of just how lucky we are in our country. But despite all of that, our health system can still improve. It still needs to improve. And we need doctors to help us work out how to improve our system to make it even better. And something else that's also close to my heart is teaching, medical education, and to give a bit back and give a little bit back to the people who have taught me, to give a lot back sometime to the medical world. Just as you who go on with medical training, just as you'll be taught by devoted teaching doctors, you can impart your own knowledge on to help the next generation and so forth, and so the cycle continues. Just a taste of what's available there. I'll finish my little spiel by saying one of my patients asked me the other day, and was talking about my career, and she said to me, if you had your time over again, Dr. Ray, would you do it all again? Would you study medicine? Will you go down the track of medicine? And without even hesitating, I said, absolutely, I would not change a thing. I would study medicine and go through all those hours of training. I would not change a thing. And then I paused for a second, and I thought, why? Actually, there is something I would change. When I studied medicine, when I began my training all those years ago, rural medicine was not an option. You could only study in the metropolitan areas. If I had my time again, and if I was training now, that's the one thing that I would change. I would train rurally with all its benefits that you'll hear about very shortly. No hiding the fact There's no hiding the fact that, you know, there's a lot of hard work and training to become a doctor. That's a given. But you play your cards right. You will get incredible rewards for that. You will get paid back 1,000 times over. That's me done. And now I'm going to introduce Alison Seckel, Dr. Alison Seckel, my colleague, and I like to call my friend from Coffs Harbour, the Director of Medical Education in Coffs Harbour. Welcome, Alison.
Thanks, Ray. I'm going to say, Ray, my friend, you got the easy job of convincing people why to be a doctor. There's lots of great reasons to be a doctor, which you talked about. So my job now is to talk about why you might consider UNSW, what specifics about our degree, and also in particular about rural entry scheme for UNSW, to see if that's the right fit for you. Okay, obviously I'm biased, but I absolutely love my job and I love my students, and I can hand on heart say that it's a fantastic degree to do. So why rural? Most of you listening come from a rural or regional background, so you're interested in that entry scheme. We get a wide range of rural and regional students, and everyone's got a slightly different path, and you'll hear that from some of our students this evening. So we get students, some of whom come from very small places, who are really super committed to returning home to share skills with their community, and they really want to go back and be part of that community, and they know that from day one. Others of you are a bit less sure what you want to do, but you really like the idea of pursuing your studies in a regional area because you know and love that lifestyle. And it is a fantastic lifestyle. So why are some of the things that you might consider when thinking, is rural right for me? So first of all, thinking about your family and community. So studying rural for some people is particularly important if they have caring responsibilities. Perhaps you've got a partner with a job in one of our regions, or maybe you have elderly parents or children. So for those people, not having to relocate to Sydney, it can be the difference between completing medicine or not being able to complete it. And that's really important to us as a university. We very much want to champion diversity, and we're very keen to get regional students through their degree and back home in the regions looking after patients. So that's a really altruistic reason why you might want to choose rural. Another one is the lifestyle. I honestly think you cannot beat the quality of life that you can get in the regions. I have a 20-minute drive to work because my husband wants a tractor and he's a farmer. I don't have to deal with traffic except in school holidays, and there's no crowds, and that's super fantastic for your mental health, and it actually gives you a couple of hours back in your day compared to students who are commuting in Sydney. So our students can go home for lunch. Some of them live on campus. They might bring the washing in, or they might go to the beach for an hour. There's an absolute abundance of activities that you can do, and a really friendly community. So the other thing that is really important about rural is you're really making a difference. So we know that we want you to come into medicine because you're from a rural and regional background, and we know you're more likely to return to the regions and rural areas because you know it and love it. We need you. 30% of Australians live in rural and regional Australia, but can you believe only 10% of doctors do? Our population is older and sicker than metropolitan people, and the conditions that we see are often more advanced. So you might have one of those stoic uncles that doesn't come in until the lump's really big or his hand's about to fall off. So country people can be like that. It makes for very interesting medicine, but it also means that each individual doctor has a real opportunity to make a difference in the lives of their patients. So there's some of the things that you might consider. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the UNSW medicine degree now. As you know, there's quite a range of degrees you can choose from. Why would you pick us? So UNSW is an undergraduate degree. You come in straight from school, and it takes 6 years. So as students are school leavers, or they've had a gap year, they're more likely to be at a similar age and stage in life. UNSW medicine's broken into 3 phases of 2 years each. So phase 1 is the first part of the degree, and Dr. Linda Farrington's going to talk about phase 1 and our research project a little later. So I'll move on a little bit to the clinical years. So phase 2, or year 3 and 4, this is where students are really getting a foothold in the hospital. So they're doing sort of half study, half hospital time, and they learn about a variety of themes in their 3rd and 4th years. We're really very keen that you get a lot of clinical experience as early as possible in your degree, and that's really very possible at the rural schools. We've got patients that aren't seeing hundreds of students like they are in metropolitan, so they're actually quite pleased to see you, and they're generally really happy for you to come and examine them and learn a bit about their conditions. So in year 3, you'll be doing terms like children's health, checking babies, pregnancy and delivery, delivering babies, and you can do that in 3rd year here, things like cancer care and assisting in operations. In year 4, you undertake this independent learning project, which is a research project for a year, and that's a real differentiating feature for the UNSW degree when you're comparing that to other degrees around Australia. So then we move on to phase 3, which is year 5 and 6, who are our senior students. And at this point, you're really fully immersed in the hospital. Most of your learning is done on the wards. This is based in our various clinical schools and also in community health placements like GP practices, community mental health, things like that. And you rotate through various types of medicine like general practice, emergency medicine, surgery and paediatrics. You also obviously get lots of rural experience, and between 5th and 6th years, you get an optional overseas elective, which our students really enjoy, and we really love to hear about their stories when they return to us in year 6. Okay, so what does becoming a doctor really involve? Ray did talk about the fact that it is a pretty in-depth degree. There's no denying that. However, it's also, you do not have to be a genius to be a doctor. You just have to be prepared to work hard, all right? And you're going to continue to work hard, but it's fun. All right, so becoming a doctor does not finish with your primary medical degree. We talk about this continuum of learning, which is our residency, internship, specialty training, and then lifelong learning as a consultant. So once you finish your 6 years of undergraduate degree, you then become what's called an intern, and that's the 12 months in the hospital in a very supervised position before you become generally registered as a doctor. So most junior doctors spend at least 2 years in the hospital system before deciding where do I really want to go in my career, and then they move on to what's called vocational training. So that's deciding, you know, I want to become a paediatrician, I'm going to join the paediatric training scheme. So those training schemes take from between 3 to 10 years to complete. So most between 3 and 5 years. If you want to be a neurosurgeon, you might be in for a slightly longer haul. On average, it takes about 10 years to become a consultant after graduating, but that's a good thing. You need to have all that learning behind you to be confident to make the call when it becomes really difficult. After you become a consultant, there's obviously still lots of education. Nobody wants a doctor who stopped learning at medical school. So we continue to study to remain clinically current to give the best care to our patients. So we're also talking about, okay, why would I choose UNSW versus other degrees? We talked about the fact that UNSW is an undergraduate degree. So when we talk about undergraduate degrees, why would I choose an undergraduate degree? We talked about the fact that other students are often at the same stage in life at you. So it means there's quite a lot of socialising. People tend to make a friendship group. And we're really lucky in the rural areas because I have between 12 and 18 students in each year, and having done this job for a number of years, I see how tight those groups become. So really they do have 18 best friends, and they really do stick with them after they graduate. So the other thing that's quite good about being an undergraduate is you get that really long career, which is very fulfilling, and it also means that often the earlier years of medicine are perhaps the most demanding in terms of hours worked, and getting that bit done out of the way while you're more energetic and don't have children can be quite a benefit. However, don't despair. There's also postgraduate degrees, about half and half in Australia. So for postgraduate students, they've done another degree beforehand. They're a slightly older population, much more diverse in their backgrounds, and they often have significant life experience, which can be particularly useful in medicine. So if you're a parent, or you've experienced illness yourself or grief or loss, and clearly you're bringing very useful experiences to your degree. Which is better? Well, there is some research on that. In the end, at the end of that 12-month general registration internship, when we look at undergraduate and postgraduate students, really they're about the same. There's not a lot of difference to choose from in terms of how skilled they are. It's really what suits you and your life. So I hope you learn lots of more interesting information from the rest of our presenters, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about our wonderful degree.
A big thank you to both Associate Professor Ray Hodgson and Dr. Alison Seckel, our two campus directors of medical education on the Mid-North Coast. Lots of really valuable information, I'm sure, for our audience to consider. I'd encourage you in the audience, our students, parents and teachers that might have joined us as well. There's a Q&A live stream chat, as you'll see on your device, and ask any questions throughout the presentations, and like those questions that you might see that you really want answered. We'll do our best in the final session to get to as many of those as we can this evening. I'd now like to welcome to the live stream microphone our Year 1 and 2 Academic Program Coordinator at Port Macquarie campus and the school's Director of Research, Dr. Linda Farrington.
Thank you, Tony. As Tony said, my name is Linda Farrington. My background is in neuroscience research, and I've been teaching here at the Rural Clinical School since the inception of Phase 1 at Port Macquarie in 2017. Phase 1 is structured in a series of 4 teaching blocks each year, in which students will learn using a scenario-based approach. First-year students learn alongside second-year students, establishing a mentorship relationship lasting the duration of the degree, which prepares you to work in multidisciplinary clinical teams. In addition to learning the basic sciences, students have access to hospital-based clinical teaching from Year 1 and learn how to communicate effectively with patients and professionals. The Phase 1 curriculum incorporates basic science teaching, in which you'll learn how to identify the components of basic and clinical sciences necessary to understand each scenario. You'll undertake hands-on practical classes in which you'll be able to apply what you're learning in lectures and tutorials. As has been mentioned, in Year 4, you'll have the unique opportunity to undertake a year-long research project on a topic of your choice. During this period, you will acquire research skills that will keep you up to date as medicine evolves, and which are valuable skills even for those going into clinical medicine and not research. Within this programme, there is an option to complete an honours project, which is a more detailed research study. From this programme, you'll gain an in-depth knowledge of your study area and may be able to publish your findings in a scientific or medical journal. ILP is the main reason why UNSW Medicine is 1 year longer than other options in New South Wales, but it gives you a competitive advantage that will make your journey to specialty colleges much smoother and more streamlined. The Rural Clinical School at UNSW incorporates 5 campuses throughout New South Wales, including Albury-Wodonga campus, Coffs Harbour, Griffith, Port Macquarie and Wagga Wagga. We do also have teaching sites in Sydney, including the Wallisworth building at the Kensington Biomedical Precinct. We are uniquely co-located with the Prince of Wales, the Royal Hospital for Women and the Sydney Children's Hospital. The 2 precincts will merge following completion of the Acute Services building and the Health Translation Hub. The clinical schools in Sydney are the Prince of Wales, St Vincent's, St George and Sutherland, South West Sydney and the Rural Clinical School. Our network serves around 40% of Sydney's population, so you have lots of opportunities to see lots of patients. So at Port Macquarie, students will undertake the same degree programme as a Sydney-based cohort. We have state-of-the-art teaching facilities and students have the advantage of undertaking all their face-to-face teaching in small groups and have increased contact time with academic staff. You'll be taught by an enthusiastic, dedicated core staff team with extensive experience in basic and applied sciences, and a skilled team of clinicians will teach you how to apply this new knowledge in the clinical setting. Our learning environment is friendly and supportive, and over the 2 years of Phase 1, students get to know each other and staff very well through small group tutorials, scenario groups and clinical skills sessions. Our approach is student-centred and there's ample opportunity to reinforce your knowledge with experiential learning. From 2021, you will also be able to experience the supportive environment at our campus in Wagga Wagga, where there will be some Phase 1 places available. We'd love to see you at our rural campuses for Year 1 and 2, and we wish you all the best in your application.
Thanks, Linda. A great snapshot of the Phase 1 program. I'm sure it's been well received. So we've talked about the medicine degree, careers within medicine, our rural teaching campuses, and now you ask, how do I get in? The Rural Entry Scheme, as I mentioned at the start, is a special entry pathway for rural students who have lived and gone to school in defined rural areas. Tonight I'll introduce to you to Mrs. Kimberly Minogue, the School Services Coordinator and our resident expert on all things rural entry, and one of our Year 1 medicine students, Theo Last, a local from our Mid-North Coast region, and who I'm sure will have your interest throughout as he describes his experience in applying for a place at UNSW Medicine through the Rural Entry Scheme. Theo will be up first to the live stream microphone this evening, and he will be followed by Kimberly. So I welcome Theo now. Welcome, Theo. Welcome to the microphone. It's all yours.
Well, hi guys. So as you've heard, my name's Theo, and I'm a Port Macquarie boy. And last year I finished Year 12, and this year I started doing medicine, which I came in through the Rural Entry Scheme, and I started doing that actually down in Sydney, down in Kensington, which we might get a chance to talk about. But what I'm really here to tell you about today is my story, my anecdote of what's happened, what it was like to try and successfully be successful in getting into medicine. So, because I understand that as well as Year 12, there's also a few Year 11 and Year 10 students among us, I'm going to start my story at the start of Year 12. So maybe anyone in Year 12 can have a little bit of a nap for the next 2 minutes while I tell this part. But I had entered Year 12 and I knew I wanted to do medicine, and I was fairly sure I wanted to do it at UNSW. I wanted to go through a rural entry scheme, but I didn't really know the gritty details about it. I knew I had to do this big, scary test called the UCAT, which some of you will have already done, and I knew that I had to get I knew I had to get a good mark in the HSC, and the way some people talk about it, they made it sound like it had to be some stratospheric achievement that was going to blow all other results out the water. I've got to tell you, it's certainly nothing like that. You need a pretty good score and you need to work hard, but you don't need some unattainable mark. So don't be put off by this idea that you need a really high mark. So I wasn't exactly sure what I needed to do to get in. So I looked it up. I went on the UNSW Medicine website, and believe it or not, they have a very clear step-by-step guide for all the things you need to do to apply it through rural entry. I won't get into those details because Kimberly after me is going to tell you about them. But that was something I found really helpful, just following this step-by-step guide, and I highly recommend that anyone who's unsure just can be constantly referring back to that. But from that, I found that I needed to do this UCAT. I needed to apply through UAC, which if there's anyone not from New South Wales, I don't really know what the process is for your states, but I'm sure everyone in Year 11 and 12 in New South Wales knows about the university's admission centre. And as well as applying through them, I also had to do a direct application to the uni. So I sort of had these three paths I needed to follow at the same time I was following my HSC. So I kind of just took a deep breath and I took small steps down each of those paths at the same time. I didn't rush headlong like a bull in a china shop trying to nail one down. I sort of just stepped back, said, I've got the year, I'm not going to panic, and that's what I did. So the UCAT. I know most of you in Year 12 will have already done it. For those in Year 10 and Year 11, I would say it is a hard exam. It's very different to anything you've ever done, but don't panic about it. Don't be scared, and do a little bit. Gradually start doing some study, maybe in the start of Year 12, and just do a little bit. Don't neglect your schoolwork trying to get the most amazing UCAT in the world. And eventually, when you get to this time next year and you're doing your exam, you'll be able to do your best, and that should be more than enough if you gradually work at it. I wouldn't panic about it. Then the other thing you've got to notice is you get your results in July, and here I was sitting about the same place that everyone in year 12 is sitting right now, having just done their UCAT, and then wondering, what do I do now? I've got this number, I've got these 4 numbers with various really large numbers out of 900. I don't know what they mean. I don't know whether it's good enough because I was the first year, and we're just sitting around wondering what to do with them. So I decided, okay, there's not going to be any information coming out, so I'll just work on the other parts of my application. So you've got to put something in through the UNSW website. That involves partly some stuff to prove that you're rural, and partly a little bit of stuff about yourself, sort of a few. It's not quite a personal statement, and it's certainly not going to be the deciding factor of what gets you in or not into med, but it's something you've got to pay a little bit of attention to, and it's something that's not, you definitely don't want to leave to the last minute. So you've got a lot of time to do that application, and I recommend you take it. I recommend you take your time to do the best you can, and also to take your time to make sure you get all the paperwork done, because while you don't exactly have to perform any Herculean tasks, there's a few little hoops you've got to jump through that I wouldn't want to be doing the night before the applications are due. So eventually it's been about 3 months between after I get my UCAT and I am finally invited to an interview. I'm lucky enough to do that. So I'm pretty pleased because I think that's a little bit of the battle that you've already won. You've managed to get that far. Well, then you probably have arguably maybe not the hardest part, but for some people, and I'd put maybe even myself included, one of the most nerve-wracking parts. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that I wasn't nervous or that you shouldn't be nervous before the interview, because it's perfectly natural that for an interview you're going to be maybe, just maybe, a little bit stressed about that. What I am going to tell you is I'm going to tell you not to panic. I'm going to say I was nervous and I managed to get in. I think everyone else, all my other friends who do med and got in, were also pretty nervous when they sat their interview. But what I would say is you've got to be yourself. You certainly cannot do any coaching course. Don't listen to anyone trying to sell you interview prep. And the way that you're going to do well in that interview is by showing the interviewers the true and honest reflection of yourself and why that person is going to be a great medical student and maybe one day a great doctor. So I've got a little story about that to sort of tell you how the stress of an interview can get into your head. But for about a week before, one of the things that was surprisingly a hard decision was what to wear to the interview. Because one part of me was thinking, okay, it's an interview. I've got to wear a suit. I've got to be impressive. And the other part of me was thinking, no, I don't want to seem pretentious. This is rural medicine. This is a rural entry scheme. I don't want to seem too formal, like I'm trying too hard to impress. So those were the two, sort of the angel and the devil on my shoulder screaming at me. And eventually I decided that I would go for the suit. So I just wore my year 12 formal suit with a slightly less flamboyant tie than I wore to the actual formal. But that's the sort of trivial things that interviews and that little exam stress and all that stuff can turn a molehill into a mountain. But the point of that story is it's natural to be stressed and you will overthink, but try not to. But it's not the end of the world if you do. It's a pretty nerve-wracking process, the entirety of year 12 with the UCAT, the interview, the HSC, and with the whole process. You've just got to take it one step at a time. You'll be stressed, but as long as you don't panic and you don't lose your perspective, it'll be all right. And one of the really nice things about the interview is you get to the interview and you're welcomed in. I was actually welcomed in by Kimberly, who I'm about to pass the baton on to, and I was also welcomed in by I was also able to have a chat with Stephanie Clark, who you're going to hear later tonight. She's a second-year medical student and was obviously a first year last year, and she had a chat with me before my interview, which was really nice. They have first-year students to talk to you when you're in the waiting room, and it's nice. It calms your nerves. You can ask them. You can shamelessly ask them for a few tips right before you head in, and that was one of the things that they do to try and settle your nerves, so it's a nice, fair test. The interviewers don't want you to leave the interview room a nervous wreck, having just had a awful, soul-crushing interview. That's certainly not what this is all about. It's just about trying to see if you have the qualities that make a good medical student or a good doctor. And then after my interview, I did my HSC, and then it's another waiting game. So we've had that 3 months between UCAT and interview. Then we've got another month between finishing the HSC and getting your HSC results. But unlike all your friends who want to get into their other courses, who are going to get an offer about 6 days after you get your ATAR, we in med, we have to wait another month. We've got to wait till the start of January. And I was lucky enough to, in the first round of medicine offers, to receive an offer. And I was relieved. It was a great feeling. It was nice to have that sort of year of hard work and filling out this form and doing this exam to pay off. Some of my friends, well, they didn't get that first round offer. They had to wait another fortnight, and they were lucky enough to get in the second round. It truly is probably the worst thing about applying is how long you've got to wait. But if you trust in yourself and you do your best, then there's a pretty good chance that your hard work will pay off. So I'm going to hand the baton on to Kimberly Minogue, who's going to go into a little bit more of the nitty-gritty details of what it's like to apply. And I hope what I've told you sort of makes it seem a little bit more human, makes it seem a little bit more real. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Theo. As Theo said, my name is Kimberly, and I will be walking you through the UNSW Medicine admissions process, concentrating on the rural entry scheme. The most important thing tonight is to know that there's a lot of information to take in, but please remember that we're here to help you. So please contact us at any point during the process. So to be eligible for the rural entry scheme, you will need to have lived in a defined rural area for at least 5 consecutive years or 10 cumulative years whilst you're at school. You will need to attach some documentation with your rural addresses. As previously mentioned, you can now commence your studies at Kensington, Port Macquarie or Wagga Wagga. So how do we apply for the rural entry scheme? There are 2 applications and 3 selection criteria. So firstly, the 2 applications which Theo did touch on. There's the University Admission Centre, so this is where you select your preferences and the university you would like to attend. Applications close on the 30th of September. So if you would like to apply for medicine at UNSW, you preference 1, UNSW Bachelor Medical Studies, Doctor of Medicine. For medicine, there is actually a second application, which is actually through the UNSW Medicine website. This is an additional application which is often forgotten by applicants. We will ask you questions about you and your motivation to study medicine. This also closes on the 30th of September. Late applications cannot be accepted, so please make sure that these are done by the 30th of September. There are 3 selection criteria: your selection rank, which is your ATAR and/or equivalent, your interview, and your UCAT ANZ, your University Clinical Aptitude Test, Australia and New Zealand. So the selection prerequisites, the minimum ATAR to study medicine with the rural entry scheme is 91. And the UCAT, which closed in May, most of you who are applying to study for 2021 will have already sat this test or will be sitting it in the next week or so. Rural entry scheme applicants that achieve a 50th percentile or above will be invited for interview prior to receiving your selection rank and or ATAR or above. The interview. Your interview will be a structured interview over a limited time. There will be 2 interviewers, usually 1 doctor and 1 community member. Interview coaching, as Theo said, is not recommended, is very easily detected and may actually be detrimental to your performance. We want to know more about you. So relax, be yourself and be honest. Campus selection, you will have 3 campuses to choose from: Port Macquarie, Wagga Wagga and Kensington. You may preference them 1, 2 and 3. Please don't preference a campus that you are not prepared to attend. Bonded places. All applicants are now automatically considered for both bonded and unbonded places. If you would like to know more about bonded and unbonded places, please contact us or visit our website. Now, your important dates. Your UAC, as I said previously, will close on the 30th of September, so please preference 1, UNSW Medicine. The medicine application portal also closes on the 30th of September. And as I mentioned previously, it is one that is often forgotten and late applications cannot be accepted. Your ATAR will be received on the 18th of December. Interviews for our rural applicants for 2021 will be in late November, early December, so please keep your eyes on your emails. Offers for UNSW Medicine will be made in the January 1st round offer. As Theo said, you have to wait a little bit longer than everybody else. And commencement of Year 1 will be on the 15th of February. There's loads of information in this presentation this evening, but we're happy to help you. So if you have any questions, please contact us, and best of luck with your applications.
Well, that's about as real as it gets. I think a lot of the audience this evening will be getting into a lot of that information that both Theo and Kimberly have offered such a valuable insight into this evening, both our rural entry and rural entry scheme admissions process. And Theo, what a fantastic illustration of the excitement and emotions that some of the applicants in our audience this evening may themselves experience very soon. Just a quick reminder to continue to submit any questions you have via the Q&A team's live stream chat function on your device, and like those questions that you see that you want answered this evening, we'll do our best. And now I think it's probably that part of the evening that many of our audience might enjoy the most as our current medical students talk about their rural medical student experience. It's my pleasure to introduce to the live stream microphone Andrew Trist, Elise Chalk, Michael Joubert and Stephanie Clark, who are currently studying, as I said earlier, at our Coffs Harbour and Port Macquarie campuses. Welcome, team. And I think, Andrew, you might be up first.
Yeah, hey everyone. So my name's Andrew. And so I'm a 4th year medical student at Coffs Harbour this year. So I'm doing that research year that was talked about before. And one of the best things about this year I found is that you're able to, with UNSW, pursue actually a specific line of what you may be interested in the future. So this year I'm doing a paediatric focused research project, which will give me that sort of advantage later on once I've completed that degree to hopefully apply through the College of Paediatricians and get a job as that. But speaking from a rural sense, I grew up around Coffs Harbour. So I grew up about 25 minutes south, little town called Urunga, attended the local high school there. And it was a very small school and not many people were interested in studying medicine. And so it was these sort of days, and I would highly recommend you take advantage of the Q&A now. That's what I did back in year 12 to find out this sort of information, especially if, you know, there's not that many peers around you who may be interested in studying medicine rurally. And so how I got into med, it was these sort of days. I was lucky enough to go straight from high school, and I actually did my first 2 years, the phase 1 section in Sydney. And so that was great. And that's another good thing about the UNSW program. You get that ability to go off to the city, metropolitan area, experience what it's like in those bigger hospitals. I got to have that on-campus life experience living there, make a whole bunch of friends. Like I was the only one from my high school who went to Sydney. And so made all those sort of connections there. And then I was able to come back to Coffs for 3rd year and live with a couple of friends here. And so I sort of get that opportunity, unique opportunity, I suppose, to experience both worlds. I saw a question in the Q&A, so I've just been flicking through about why you enjoy Coffs and sort of spare time you can do. So Coffs, I find it's similar to all the other rural campuses. It's very supportive, as Alison was saying before. It's a very close-knit community. You'll have lots of activities and days together. You've got, you know, all these activities that the students run. So they have social activities, they do their own charity events, and there's just, you make a lot of close friends. On top of that, you know, I'm someone who's grown up here and had those sort of connections. You know, you have that opportunity to join your local sporting teams. You know, you have an opportunity to get a job and work while you're studying as well, which is really great. And, you know, you can go off to the beach, you can go, you know, explore rainforests up in Dorrigo. So there's all that sort of extra stuff around, which is extremely enjoyable. And it really is the best of both worlds, having that opportunity to come from a city originally and then come back rurally and study here. And you'll find you'll get a lot more support from the staff at the clinical school, as well as being in the hospital. And you still have that opportunity to sort of visit home and Sydney, which I still regularly do, which is quite nice. That's about it from me. So I'm going to pass on to Elise, who's also from Coffs Harbour.
Hi guys, my name's Elise. I'm a final year medical student here in Coffs Harbour. I'm originally from Central Queensland, and when I applied to medicine, I honestly didn't know what direction I wanted to take in medicine. So the subjects I studied were English, chemistry, biology, maths, and ancient history. I also did some university subjects in health while I was at high school, so I knew that this was the field I wanted to go into. I just didn't know where exactly I was going in that field. I also didn't know anything about the rural entry scheme, and at the time of applying, the Rural Clinical School talked me through the whole application process. So the degree that I've completed is a little bit different to what you've been taught about tonight. So I was involved in the Medicine Arts program, which in addition to the Bachelor of Medical Studies and the Doctor of Medicine, I've also completed a Bachelor of Arts with a major in history and a minor in psychology. And this has allowed myself to pursue an interest outside of medical sciences. It's been a little bit more time intensive, but if you have a passion that you want to pursue that's not just science, I would definitely recommend this, and it's something that I'm very fortunate to have had with UNSW. So what I love about Coffs, you really can't go past the lifestyle here. It is absolutely stunning, and it's really not far from Brisbane or Sydney either. So I can confirm that in the middle of winter, it is still beach weather. I live with my two best friends, and all my mates are within about a 10-minute radius. But what I like most about Coffs Harbour is the support that we receive here. It's outstanding. So the academic support and the administrative staff look after your every need. So to reiterate some of the things that Alison said, like, you are not just a number here. Everyone is on a first name basis, and they are always there, whether it's for a chat or some study snacks. They've cultivated an exceptional relationship with the medical community here in Coffs. And so we have access to additional teaching and opportunities that a lot of the metropolitan clinical schools won't have access to. So basically, if you can dream it, if you can think of it, they can make it happen for you. The doctors here are so committed to teaching, and they really want to have or provide the best clinical experience as possible for you. So you become a really integral part of the team, and you will be very hands-on in everything from hip replacement surgeries to delivering babies. And I think that this attitude is best summed up by my first day here in Coffs. So I was on an emergency department rotation, and I was minding my own business when I heard a call for a medical student to attend resus. So I ran over, and the doctor was there suturing a stab wound in a patient's head. And I remember standing there watching as he closed off some of the blood vessels and the deeper tissues, and I thought how lucky I was to be there watching, when he turned to me and said, "Have you ever used a staple gun?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, you're going to learn very fast." And so there I was on my first day, stapling back together someone's stab wound. From a career perspective, going rural is looked upon so highly by all of the medical specialties, and most hospitals recognise the value in going rural, and they'll have mandatory rural rotations. And I loved it here so much that I've actually decided to stay in Coffs Harbour for my internship and residency training. So the last thing I wanted to say is that medicine can really take you anywhere. So with UNSW, I've completed placements in a variety of specialties all over the world. I did my research in pediatrics, and as a final year student, I've decided on a career in military medicine. So I'm a recipient of the Defence Sponsorship Program, and so Defence covers the cost of my studies, and they also provide a very generous financial support while I'm studying. And once I'm finished, they have a job waiting for me on the other side as an army doctor. So if you're looking for something that's challenging and worthwhile, consider medicine, and it really can take you anywhere. And as the others have said, ask as many questions as you possibly can tonight, and all the best, guys. Thank you very much. I think I'll hand over to Michael.
Hello. Hey guys, I'm Michael. I'm a 6th year here in Port Macquarie. I'm originally from Bowral, and then I moved to Sydney to start university, and I did the first 4 years there before I came and did 5th and 6th year here. So I think I have a bit of a perspective to compare studying in Sydney versus in a rural school. And while I definitely enjoyed my time in Sydney, thinking about it now definitely makes me appreciate just how good we have it here in Port. I think the biggest thing is the tight-knit community. So universities are really big, and it can feel like you can get lost in the crowd pretty easily. But here, we know all of the clinical staff. When we go up onto the wards, we know most of the senior doctors' names. We're friends with most of the junior doctors out of hospital, and it's really hard to overemphasize just how beneficial it is to have a supportive team around you when you're studying medicine. So all the staff here, from the doctors to the lecturers, the administrative staff, they all go the extra mile to make sure that we have the best experience possible. And it's something that all the students really appreciate because it makes a massive difference. The other thing that I think is great about studying rurally is the small class size. So I'm actually in the smallest class that's been through Port Macquarie. There's only 12 of us. And then when we do our clinical rotations in phase 3, so that's things like pediatrics, obstetrics, surgery, we get broken up into even smaller teams. So most of the time I'm being taught by amazing doctors and teachers like Professor Hodgson, and there's just 2 or 3 other students in the room. I think that's a massive advantage, and it's not something that I experienced before I moved rurally. The thing I'd finish up by saying is that, guys, if you do end up studying medicine, you're going to be studying medicine a lot. So do it somewhere that makes you happy. For me, that's been rurally, and it's been in Port Macquarie. I've enjoyed my time here so much that I've committed to staying for at least another 2 years. I'll be doing my internship and residency here. So I hope to see a few of you around in future years, and I wish you all the best with your studies and with your application. Thank you.
Okay, so hi, my name's Stephanie and I'm a 2nd year studying here in Port Macquarie, and I actually grew up here in Port, so I was really grateful for the opportunity to continue studying here. I chose med because I always had an interest in the healthcare field and the supportive role of a doctor. To be sure though, it was the right pursuit for me. Throughout high school and over my gap year, I took every opportunity I could to gain clinical experience, and this really consolidated for me that med was what I wanted to study. So in the HSC, my subjects were Advanced and Extension 1 English, Biology, PDHPE, General Maths, and Legal Studies. So what do I love about studying here in Port Macquarie? Well, there are so many advantages to choosing to study at a rural clinical school, and in all honesty, I really can't speak highly enough of my experience so far. Our class size is much smaller than what's at the metropolitan site, and this allows for more personalised teaching, especially in clinical areas like the hospital. And from the very first few weeks of year 1, we are taken into hospital, and by about midway through the year, we are talking and working with real patients. So in the hospital here, the clinicians are all really passionate about teaching and ensuring that we make the most of our time in hospital. So something that comes to mind when I think about my experience so far was during one of my hospital visits in year 1, I was able to take a history from a patient with a really rare condition. And after the history, not only did the clinician who was taking us around explain the entire condition to us, but she was also able to show us the scans that they had, the current results, and explain the current ideas of intervention and management the hospital were thinking for this patient. Now, this was absolutely above and beyond for a first-year student who was really only there just to learn how to work with a patient and talk to a patient. However, this doctor was more than happy to spend her time talking us through the case and answering any questions we had. And trust me, there are a lot of questions. So this is the kind of dedication that's quite common throughout the Rural Clinical School and something I'm pretty sure you won't find at larger metropolitan sites. Having a small cohort also allows for great bonding within your year group and the year groups above and below. It's also a lot easier to get to know the older students at a rural clinical school, who are not only a great source of advice, but also they become really great friends too. The staff at the Rural Clinical School are nothing short of incredible. Both the academic and professional staff go above and beyond to look after us as Phase 1 students. Their support is always beneficial, and the staff do get to know us personally by first name, and it really does become a big family. So it's a good supportive environment to be in. So outside of the campus, Port has a lot of great things to offer. Firstly, the Port Macquarie Med Society, which is a student-run group that plans events and fundraisers throughout the year, such as winter ball or beach barbecues. And these events are always great fun and a good opportunity to get to know your peers and the peers in other year groups. And recently we have had to resort to online video calls and coffee catch-ups through Zoom to keep in touch. However, that's another perk of having a small cohort. All 25 of us could be on the same video call without too much chaos. So Port is also just a really great relaxed place. So if you enjoy the beach lifestyle and a short commute, then the Rural Clinical School is definitely for you. In saying all of this, the program is delivered very much in parallel to the Kensington program, and if the city is more your calling, Kensington is also a great place to be. So if there's anything I could leave you with, I'd probably say my biggest concern in preferencing Port Macquarie was that I'd be missing out by not being in Kensington. But it's pretty safe to say that fear went away after week 1, year 1. So if I could recommend anything, it would be really consider the Rural Clinical School when applying. I couldn't be happier with my decision and the 24 peers I now consider my family. It really is a unique experience, and I'm yet to meet a Rural Clinical School student who hasn't felt the same way. So yeah, good luck with your applications, and thank you for listening to us all tonight.
that's a pretty good video highlighting many of our or all of our campuses and facilities across the Rural Clinical School and our regions. But as you've no doubt concluded from our presenters this evening, it's all about our students, really. They are the spirit of the school. They are why the doctors love teaching, and the students' passion and enthusiasm is what makes the Rural Clinical School such a great place to study. I'm sure all of you in our online audience this evening have a much better understanding and perception of what it might be like at a rural campus from listening to Andrew, Elise, Michael and Steph. And of course, let's not forget Theo's rural entry experience. Thanks, team. Our student team will actually stay with us to be part of the final session. We are time challenged as it is now, and I welcome back at this point our other presenters, Associate Professor Dr. Ray, Dr. Alison Seckel, Dr. Linda Farrington and Kimberly Minogue. So time is almost up, but we will be answering a few of the questions that you have submitted through the live stream chat, and all questions from the presentation will be answered and sent out along with the link to the presentation should you want to look over it. So the first question I have tonight is for Steph, one of our student team, to answer. And the question, Steph, is, are there O-Week activities at the Rural Clinical School, and do we get to mix with Sydney students or students at other rural campuses?
Yes, so there are definitely O-Week activities here at the Rural Clinical School, and I would go as far to say as it's a better O-Week than what is run in Kensington. I might be biased though. It is a great opportunity to get to know your peers that you'll be doing the degree with, and we do a lot of activities throughout town and just getting to know the area a little bit. So it's a really great week, and we have older students in year 2 and year 3 who run it and facilitate it, and so you get to know them as well. And yeah, it's a lot of fun and a really good time. And there's also a few events where the faculty will come along and older students will come along. So yeah, we definitely do have an O-Week and it's a bunch of fun. And as for the Sydney students, do you get to meet Sydney students? Yeah, definitely. So throughout the degree, there's different opportunities that Sydney put on events that we're always invited to attend. But one of those major events would be Med Camp. So within your first few weeks in year 1, the large group of the cohort go on Med Camp, which is a little camp in Sydney, and it's just a lot of events to get to know the Sydney cohort and your own cohort. By this point, you know the 25 of you in Port quite well. So when I did attend Med Camp, it was great because you had 25 best friends there already. But yeah, you do get to see them then, and then throughout the year, you occasionally have classes with them. So it's always good fun. And yeah, you definitely do get to meet them and get to know them quite well through Facebook groups and other things. So yeah, you do get to meet them. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Steph. And so my next question that we've got here for our live presenters is for Dr. Ray, actually. So Ray, the question is, what kind of skills does a doctor need other than the high marks to be considered for entry into the course?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I guess you mean what kind of skills does a student need? I would imagine. Hopefully, if you're a doctor, hopefully you've already gone through the course. Well, as Kimberly said, the three components of the ATARs and the UCAT in the interview. So the interview is what specifically would narrow down with that question. And I think, as Kimberly also said, that you can't fake it. Coaching is not going to help. In fact, coaching may make things worse for you. What we are looking for in the interview, and when I say we, the two interviewers who are quite experienced, we're looking for genuine people. We're looking for people who genuinely come across as being earnest and empathic. And how do you do that? The best bit of advice I got for whenever I have to give a talk or a speech or whatever, the best bit of advice I got long ago was just to be yourself, and things come out genuine when you do that. And you know, well, what if I'm being myself and I fail the interview and I don't get through? Well, that's so be it. I think if you can accept that with the interview, if you're meant to get into this medical course, you will get in. You're with that interview component. Your interviewers are experienced enough to tell that if by being yourself, if you're coming across that way, you'll get through. How else can you do it? Tell a story about yourself. Tell a story about yourself when you are being empathic, when you're being honest. That's something that moved you. And if that genuinely moved you when you tell that story, your interviewers will see that. That's probably the best advice I can give there.
Thanks, Ray. So the next question we've got, Kimberly, I might ask you this one. How long do I have to live in a rural town to qualify for the rural entry scheme?
Thanks, Tony. So as I said previously, you need to live in a rural area whilst you're at school for 5 consecutive years or 10 cumulative years. You do need an RRMA rating of 3 to 7. That is your area. I know that sounds like a whole load of jargon, but it is on our website. But if you're having difficulty locating what sort of area you're from, please contact us and we'll walk you through it and help you out and show you what to do. Unfortunately, once you've finished school, your time in a rural area is not considered as your rural application. It is whilst you are at school. That's it, Tony.
Thanks, Kimberly. The next question I have, Theo, it might be something, given you're in Kensington at the moment, that you might be able to answer for us. What's it like being a rural student in Kensington, and can I come back to a rural campus after a few years?
All right. So I love, okay, I'm not technically in Kensington at the moment because the coronavirus sent me back up to Port because my college where I was staying closed because of the pandemic measures. But for the brief 6 to 7 weeks I was there, I had a whale of a time in Kensington. I think for most of my, well, for year 10 and year 11, I was kind of convinced that I really wanted to study medicine in Port because I do love it here. And all the stuff that everyone's previously mentioned about the lifestyle is correct, and I would agree with that. But I went to the National Youth Science Forum and I was able to sort of broaden my horizons then and hang out with people from all sorts of different backgrounds and with all sorts of different interests. And I thought I would really like to experience that again in a bit more detail. And I decided, well, why don't I change my preferences and just try and spend the first 2 years of my medical degree in Sydney, and so I could have that experience on campus, living on campus, which is amazing. There's lots of other rural medical students and also non-rural medical students who are great to hang out with. You get to med camp, like Stephanie mentioned, was great, in which we were able to, as well as meet the rest of our cohort in Sydney, also meet the Port cohort, which was really valuable. But I enjoy it. It's nice to be in these big buildings where cutting edge research is done. It's nice to see these huge labs. It's got its disadvantages. It's not as personal. You've got a much bigger cohort, so you don't know everyone. And I would definitely say, from what I've seen, the Port Phase 1 cohort is tighter as a whole. They're all more friends. They're all friends in the same, which is different to how in Kensington there's just so many people that it's kind of groups of friends, which is great, and I love it. But it's got its advantages and its disadvantages. Now, I went through the rural entry scheme for a reason, and that's because I'm passionate about rural living and I want to work in a rural area. So eventually, at some point in my degree, I have plans to come back to one of UNSW's rural campuses. So you can either do that for years, you can either come from year 3 to year 6, or you can come in year 5. Now, it's a little bit difficult with the way that there's now Phase 1 at Wagga and Port Macquarie. It's going to be quite difficult if you start in Sydney to get back to Wagga or Port, because the people who started in Port or Wagga are likely going to want to stay there. So it's going to be a bit difficult to get back. But from what I understand, it's fairly easy to get back to go to Coffs, to go to Albury, to go to Griffith for years for the other phases of your degree if you want to start in Sydney.
Great, thanks Theo, that's terrific. So The next question we've got here, and I'm just having a look at it. Linda, this might be one for you. It's talking about research and research skills. So I've never done any type of research before and haven't considered medical research as a career path. Do we get much help in developing research skills, in choosing topics and writing things up? I think we might have.
You're on mute, Linda.
Sorry, I was just talking away there for about 10 minutes and I was on mute. So yes, to recap, you get lots of support. That's the whole purpose of the ILP year, is that you get to do some research. You get lots of support. We have dedicated ILP coordinators at Port Macquarie and at Coffs Harbour. We will help you with finding projects and finding supervisors to help you with those projects. You can also find your own topics if there's something that you're really interested in, and identify your own supervisor. You have the potential to publish what you find in a scientific journal, so you also get that experience of what it's like to actually write up your research for publication. You learn a huge number of skills that will enable you to adapt in a changing clinical environment with advancements in technology and medical knowledge. And this research experience can really give you a competitive edge, as I said earlier, when you're applying. Thanks, Tony.
Tony, you're on mute.
On mute, Tony. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Mute's causing us a bit of grief. Okay, so Michael and Elise, I think we might throw this question to you. What are some of the big differences between studying medicine at UNSW Kensington or choosing a rural clinical school campus and studying there? Do you have students that study at both? So Michael, if you want to lead off, and then maybe Elise add anything extra.
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference is what I spoke about before, that the one-on-one, it's not exactly one-on-one time, but it's pretty close, with the senior doctors in a rural location is definitely much more of a common thing in a rural area. I didn't really have that in Sydney, and I think that's a pretty massive advantage to coming rurally. And with that, the consultants get to know most of the students, and I think they start to personalise the learning a little bit. They know what we're good at, what we're not. And so they start to tailor things a little bit more. And then definitely something I've experienced in Port, at least, is that we get a lot of additional learning as well, and stuff that I've found is very applicable to what we do on the wards. So we do, one of the things that stands out to me is that we do a lot of simulation sessions in Port Macquarie. We have dummies set up and we do lots of CPR practice and advanced life support. And I had a little bit of that when I was in Sydney, but not too much. But this last year we were doing it every week, and so I find that maybe things are just a little bit more tailored to what's practical on the wards here, and that's something that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Michael has said. I just want to add that in terms of lecture sizes in Kensington, there was hundreds of people in a lecture theatre, to the point sometimes that if you came late, you didn't get a seat. Whereas in Coffs, the most amount of students that's going to be in a lecture is 17, which makes it a lot easier to ask questions and help you understand what's going on in the lecture content. As I said before, we get a lot of additional tutorials and even fun little things like we have an ECG club here in Coffs, which doesn't sound exciting, but I promise you it is. We get regular anatomy tutorials, which in the later stages of medicine you don't get in Sydney. So that's a big advantage having that here in Coffs. The other thing, just to touch on what Michael said about the relationships that you make with doctors, they do come to know you and know you quite well. They know your skills, and it makes it a lot easier when you're applying for jobs or looking for research in the future. When you have an existing relationship with these doctors, they can write references for you instead of in Sydney trying to find someone who actually remembers your face, let alone who can make a comment about your proficiency or skills. The last thing I just wanted to touch on is UNSW down in Kensington has a very big campus and has a lot of facilities, but it's important to remember that you're sharing that with almost 80,000 other people. So if you think you're going to get a seat at lunchtime, you're wrong, you won't. And it's just those little things that it's just much easier in a rural environment to just exist on campus as opposed to in Sydney. So yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Elise. And look, we are over time and we apologise for running a little bit over this evening. We did get a lot of questions through the Q&A chat. So the last question we'll be able to answer live tonight. We will get back to all the others, as I said. And Alison, I might ask you to answer this one. So I identify as part of the LGBTIQA community. I'm wondering how inclusive UNSW is. I'm a bit worried I might not fit in. Is there any support?
Well, I'll give you the long answer, but also the short answer is absolutely there's heaps of support. I know sometimes people are a bit worried, you know, regions, maybe they're less friendly, all that sort of stuff. Well, we're really committed to diversity and inclusiveness at the Rural Clinical School. So, for instance, we make sure that all our students are offered UNSW allied training when they come to us, and our staff have all done that as well. And that's looking at some of the issues that people from an LGBTQI plus background might face, like coming out or insecurity or transgender issues, things like that. There's also, we have many LGBTQI plus students with us in Coffs and in the other clinical schools, and they're obviously a really cherished part of our community. And in fact, Coffs Harbour has a really vibrant LGBTQI plus community in the general population, which you might not have thought about. So you can come to us without any concerns or worries at all. We welcome you with open arms.
Thanks, Alison. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our presentation this evening. We have run a bit over, and again, my apologies for that. We have got lots of interaction and engagement on that Q&A chat though, so we will get to all of those questions for you. I hope you have taken something out of tonight's presentation, and should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call or email the Rural Clinical School, our school services team. If you can think of anything else that you want to ask, or perhaps you've got specific circumstances related to an application that you'd like to discuss, the details will be on the screen shortly for you in terms of email addresses. I'd like to certainly thank all our people sitting behind the scenes of the presentation this evening, our technical production team, our moderators, staff facilitators, all working to ensure an uneventful live stream. So other than Linda and I not turning our mics on, it's gone terrifically. So thank you to those people. Thank you once again to our presenters this evening, and to you, our live stream audience, for joining us. We're hopeful your interest in studying at UNSW Medicine, and particularly any of our Rural Clinical School campuses, has been enhanced and reinforced tonight. Thank you and good evening.